service. Okay, so TCP wrappers, see, they only say this host can or can't access my system, but they don't say how many times in a minute or how many times in an hour they can access. So that's where denial of service attacks keyed in. Once they got access, they just pounded the site over and over and over again. And you can see down here, you can prevent denial of service attacks. If one host seems to be hogging your services, you can limit the number of simultaneous connections from that host. ZynetD has a huge number of logging capabilities. You can log start and stop times for accesses. When somebody gets denied access, you can log information like the IP address where they did it from, what service they were trying to gain access to, what time of day, and so on. So there's all sorts of information that you can gather. The more information you have, the better of a security plan you can develop. There's an FAQ on here that you can read about what questions people have typically about ZynetD. There's sample config files, so you can configure ZynetD to do whatever you want on your system. You can also learn about ZynetD from your man pages. If you do man xi-netd, you'll get information here. If you page down through, you'll see different options you can use when you start up ZynetD. Typically it's started at boot time. There's a zynetd.conf, so you can configure what services ZynetD controls and so on. And like I said, ZynetD only controls access to certain services. You can make whatever services you want controlled by ZynetD. It's a very secure system, and like I said, it's the beauty of Linux. It's a form follows function kind of thing. People needed this, so they developed it. Okay, more people were interested in it, so more people submitted bugs, so it was developed quicker, and now it's a very mature code base that's included in commercial products, and it's a response to the new internet, if you will. Let's wrap up by talking a little bit about remote system administration. Whenever you're going to do remote system administration, always use SSH. Don't use Telnet, because if you're going to do remote system administration, you're probably going to type in the root password, and you don't want to use Telnet when you do that, because then the root password will travel over the network in an unencrypted fashion. Okay? Now, SSH will give you a text-based login to some machine, and you can use a lot of tools. We've already talked about ifconfig. We've talked about routes already, and you can use those tools certainly over a text-based connection. And I'll show you a couple more before we wrap up. You can get a graphical interface on some remote machine if you're in the same network as that machine, the same local network. Okay? Now, you might not even want to do this for system administration tasks. Maybe you want to do this just because that machine over there has some software that you want to run, and that software is a graphical software. We used to do this all the time in college because one machine in our lab had Mathematica on it, and that's a graphical math program, does some graphing and stuff like that. And it was a very expensive piece of software, so we only could install it on one machine, but we could have many instances of it running at the same time, and so we would all log on to other machines and then just get a graphical interface on our machine to the other machine. So let me show you how to do that. So to use the XWindows program remotely, and I'm going to give the example of connecting to a machine called Baker from a machine called Adams. So I log into Adams, and then I type xhost plus Baker. That puts Baker in my list of machines that I can run X on. Then I log into Baker with SSH, and when I'm on Baker, I type export display Adams :0.0. So what this does is it sets Baker's display variable to be Adams console. So then when I launch programs on Baker, then the display of those programs is sent to Adams. So I can use whatever's on Baker on Adams in a graphical format. Okay? So now let's go and look at a couple more text-based system administration tools that we can use. One of the most useful text-based network diagnostic tools that you have at your disposal is a program called Ping. And what you do with Ping is you ping another computer, and then that computer will send you packets, and the program will measure the amount of time that it takes for the packets to get to you and the response to get back to them. So let's ping a computer and see how this works. I'm going to ping www.Simon-Fraser University in Canada. So I ping that computer, and over here you can see the amount of time that it takes for the packets to get to me. And a lot of them are around 10 milliseconds. There's one in there that's like 30. I'm just going to hit Control-C now. And now we get a summary of what happened. 11 were transmitted, 11 were received, none were lost. And then we get a minimum time, round-trip time, average, and a maximum, and also a deviation in that. So that's just some statistical information on the connection. Now, when I ping www.sfu.ca and I get this back, I learn a lot of things. One, I learned that the computer at Simon Fraser is up and running. I also learned that my name server is working because it was able to translate from www.sfu.ca to the IP address for that machine. I also learned that my gateway is working because I was able to get out and get to that machine at all. Okay, so I learned a lot of stuff. Now, if I ping www.sfu.ca and that didn't work, but I could ping 142.58.282, what does that tell me? Well, that tells me that my name server is not working, because the only difference between pinging the name and pinging the number is my name server does that conversion. So if I can't ping the name but I can ping the number, that says my name server is not working. If I couldn't even ping the number, but I could ping my gateway, then that says that the computer at Simon Fraser is down, because my gateway is working, my name server is working, but I can't ping the name or the number. That says that that computer is actually down. Okay, so you can learn a lot with ping if you're careful about what you're pinging and where it's at. Definitely ping your gateway and your name servers to make sure they're working, and then when you ping outside stuff, you'll learn if that machine is up or not. All right, well, let's wrap up this nugget with a little review of what we talked about. First, I gave you an overview of networking. We talked about TCP/IP and DNS. We talked about routers and addresses. And then we talked about how to configure our computer so that it was accessible to the network, and also how to access other sites remotely from our site. We learned programs like Telnet and FTP, SSH, Mozilla. Then we talked about how to control access to our site through firewalls, through TCP wrappers, through ZynetD. And the main thing I wanted to get across here was that this is a really, really, really broad topic. And if you're the system administrator of a computer with sensitive data, you've got to keep on top of this stuff. You've got to read news groups to keep on top of recent developments, tech journals, things like that. And those references that I gave you have links to all that information. And finally, we talked about remote system administration. We learned how to run X Windows remotely, and also how to the command ping. Well, we're going to touch on networks a lot more throughout this video series. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. I hope you found this informative, and thanks for viewing.